welcome to Toronto. Welcome to the film festival. It's your first time here.
Yeah, absolutely. It's amazing. What an amazing place.
If you have any questions, please stick up your hands. We'll get a microphone over to you. In the meantime, I'll start things off, and actually I'll start off with Jonathan. Jonathan, at what point did you realize that your parents' story was one that needed to be told on the screen?
Well, as a film producer, you're always looking for stories, and I don't know, one day about 15 years ago, I woke up and went, that's interesting. My parents, that's a good story. And at about that time, I saw a play by a writer called Bill Nicholson called Shadowlands, which I loved, and I thought this is the tone that I would like if I was to make a film about my parents. And I met Bill, who I was working with on a film called Elizabeth the Golden Age, and I asked him if he would write the story. I told him the story. And he said, I'd love to write, it's an amazing story, but only if you don't pay me. So I went, okay, that's good, I like that. So we have now paid him, I should say, since the film has actually happened. But it meant that we could develop it over a very long time. And then when Andy and I became business partners in our company, the Imaginarium, I gave the script to him, he liked it, and so we then continued to develop it together. But the film was never going to happen until we found the critical ingredients who are sitting on my right.
Of course, and Andy, how much did you know about this story before? Did you know anything about it before you were approached to be part of it?
No, not at all. I knew nothing of it. It's lovely being described as an ingredient, though. I really appreciate that. No, nothing at all. I was sent the script and I read it and I just cried constantly and laughed a lot and cried more and then laughed more. Mostly more laughter than crying, but a lot of crying. So that was like loads of laughter. And it felt so strangely, stranger than fiction. And so strangely unique. And then I sat with Jonathan. We had a delightful dinner in Los Angeles, and there was just a magic that I felt about the whole process, and his parents' life and his life. And I spoke to Andy on the phone, and I felt so heartened that his vision was so heartfelt and so about the pioneering spirit of these two people, and it was just one of those incredibly life-affirming stories that you can't help but be inspired by and you can't help but be changed by in some way.
And Claire, how did you come into the project, and did you do a lot of crying too?
I did a lot of crying on and off screen. No, I did. I've never read a script and felt that way about it and read it and had such a strong... I didn't really think about it, and a lot of the time, I don't know whether you do this, but when you're reading something, you're going, oh, could I do that? Or, I wonder how I'll do that, and I wonder. I just didn't think about anything. I didn't think about me reading it, thinking I might be in it, or how they would do it. I just read the story, and I mean, it was just beyond moved, really. And then had a very strange experience where Andy just asked me to do it, and then met Andrew and. Yeah, it was just very, very quick. Wasn't a lot of time to think, actually. So just had to go, yes, please, yes. I said yes a lot.
Now, Andy, this is your directorial debut. And was it important for you to make this film be your directorial debut?
We started working on this in 2013, I believe it was, and then whilst we were we did some early location scouting, and then Jungle Book came along actually, and so we then decided that it would be a great opportunity for the Imaginarium Studios with the performance capture, etc., to start working on that. So we actually shot Jungle Book in South Africa. And then, because it's such an incredibly long post-production period, which has been going on for 2 years, there was a hiatus in the middle, and we had the opportunity to return to this. So, in fact, this has come first. I mean, I truly. I'm so thankful that it is the first film that I've made, because it's such an incredibly vivid, brilliant, vibrant, and witty take on disaster. I was actually brought up my father was a doctor, and my mother taught disabled children. So I grew up with kids who had spina bifida and polio and were thalidomide, and it was very much. I felt very connected to this world, and it just seems to me that people choose to respond to adversity in so many different ways and can cope with it, and some people can't. But what was incredible about this story was the wit with which these people dealt with adversity, and that was what I wanted to bring to the movie. And as Andrew was saying, this sense of pioneering. I mean, these were incredible pioneers. To live outside of the hospital system with that level of disability in 1959. I have a sister who's an MS sufferer now, and getting around in a wheelchair in 2017 is pretty impossible. But to try and exist outside of the hospital system at that time, I just thought was like climbing Everest in your backyard. And that's what really inspired me about this tale.
All right, let's open it up to questions. We have one down here. Have a microphone.
Good morning, Bruce Kirkland from the Toronto Sun and Post Media News Network. Andy, you're such a romantic. And this is a good thing. You're not ashamed or reluctant to express things in a lyrical and romantic way, even when it's a tough subject. And I'm curious how strong an urge it was for this project.
It was absolutely the defining way I wanted to make this movie. It was never going to be a drama documentary. It was never going to be a sort of very dark take on something that is, you know, which affects people in such negative and desperate ways. This was always, I mean, the essence of this movie is hope. The essence of this movie is love. And the essence of Robin and Diana is this incredible wit and humor. And so that was reflected in every single aspect of making this film. From the beginning of the movie, which is like a fairy tale, you know, these two gilded young people, athletic, great, you know, their lives are going to be incredible. They are totally in love with each other, and then obviously they get struck down, and it's in every choice of design, in every shot, in every aspect of it was this vibrancy with which they continued to live life afterwards. And we were making a movie. We were not making a documentary, and that is one of the most exciting things, I think, about the energy of what we all had and felt on set. Was this we were elevating this to tell a story, not just a literal story of survival, but a metaphor for our times about love, about the power of love.
Andrew, last night after the screening, you told the audience there that you found Jonathan was a great life source that gave you a lot of material for you to build this character. What sort of tips did he give you, or what did he say?
I don't want to embarrass him any more than I already have. It's more his essence, I'm afraid. Sorry, dear boy. It's more just being around his essence. He's definitely his father's son and his mother's son. But there's an essence, that Cavendish essence, which was so intoxicating for me, just in script form when I read the script, and in meeting Jonathan, and then meeting Diana, and meeting all of the old friends. It was by osmosis, really. I think that was the process. It was time spent and just opening my pores and all my senses to, you know, the essence of his DNA, the essence of Jonathan's DNA, which is very lovely to be around and to absorb, you know. So.
And Claire, you actually got to meet Diana, I assume, before you started working on this. What essence of her struck you right away when you met her?
Well, I was a bit scared to meet her because she, after reading the script, she became a bit of a hero in my head. But she's exactly how she's drawn by Bill Nicholson, who wrote the script. She's just herself. She's unashamedly herself, and she won't be anyone else for anyone else, which I just find incredible. And she's very, very honest and truthful without being sentimental or anything like that. She just says what she thinks, and she means what she says, which I think is incredible. But also, it's extraordinary to know this woman now as she is now, and know what she was like as a young woman, and how far she's travelled in her journey of who she is really through her relationship with Robin and having to care for someone. I think you can't underestimate. I met someone yesterday actually who was saying that her mother cares for her grandmother, and I don't think you can underestimate what it's like to care for someone in that way, to be somebody's everything, and know that they can't exist without you. But she wears it incredibly lightly, and she's very inspirational, but never would want to think that she is, I don't think. She's just great.
And Jonathan, you brought her to the screening last night, and she evoked the third of 3 standing ovations in the audience. Her response to the film was fantastically good, wasn't it?
Yeah, thank goodness. I think the screening, yes, that Andy and I were most nervous about was the screening that we had for my mother. And she did love it. And we were talking actually last night was the first time I think she saw it as a punter in a way. And I've only ever seen my mother cry once, all in my entire life, despite everything that was going on. And that's one of the things that we wanted to put across. And actually that was when her mother gave her a kettle for the 3rd time running at Christmas. That was the only time I ever saw her cry. And there were quite a lot of other times and places where crying might have been more appropriate. And so I think what she loves about the film is that it absolutely accurately gets the way that they dealt with life. And the fact that what my mother did once my father became ill, and this was a man who had been in total control of his life, apparently, and then he lost total control of his life. And what my mother very cleverly and subtly did was gave him control back behind the scenes so that he became again, and this, remember, was the 1960s, he became again, the person who suggested where people sat for lunch. They were very social, they had a lot of friends, and he was apparently in charge. And the subtlety with which she did that and made it happen and surrounded him with people, and he was an enormously charismatic and funny man. And I think what has astonished her most of all is Andrew's performance, which really, has brought my father back in the most extraordinary way. And about 3 weeks before we started filming, I had a very frightening moment in which I did realize that Andrew was going to bring my father back. I got a phone message, and I listened to it, and it was my father, and he'd been dead for 22 years. And at the end of the message, Andrew went, "How was that?"
Nice way to freak him out. And Andrew, talk a bit about portraying somebody who's lost control of his life. What's it like to act with only having your face as a resource for the screen? How difficult is that, and how do you master that?
Well, I have to answer that in 2 ways. Of course, as the character, as Robin, it's a whole host of things. It's loss. It's incorporating the loss of one's former connection to the world, i.e. the body, because he was a very athletic man. He was a very physical man, wasn't he? And an extrovert and a leader and a kind of the leader of the tribe, really, and an adventurer. So what happens when that primary source of communion with life, with people, with the world, with nature gets taken away without any control? So of course, it's a very complicated process that is impossible to fathom. The stages of grief when you lose something that you love. It's a loss. It's a loss of self in some way. And then of course he through the love of his wife and I think his own inner resources, he managed to find a way to live such a life of fullness and joy. But as a performer, as an actor, I have to say I found it very, very pleasurable to be limited. It was very strange. I thought it would be dreadful, and of course in moments it was. But ultimately I felt very grateful that I got to have that experience for a brief period of time to to empathize as deeply as possible with that experience. What a gift it is to be an actor that gets to, you know, step in other people's shoes in that way, and increase empathy in that way. But also, there was something delightful and strangely enjoyable about being depotentized, about having your power totally having to surrender to your limitations. And I think that was a wisdom that I think Robin probably got to pretty early on with Diana, and enabled him to live in a very, very full way by accepting the limitation, and also not accepting the limitations within those limitations that other people were putting onto him. He thought, well, I know I can't control this, but I know I maybe can control something else. And I thought, yeah, that's very, very beautiful.
All right, we have a question in the back.
Russ Nelson, Red Carpet News. Congratulations, everyone, on a beautiful piece of cinema. My question is to the whole panel, but perhaps starting with Andrew. Love is undeniably the most important and universal word in all language. I'm curious how the process of making this film and experiencing this story perhaps changed and redefined your parameter, your definition of what that word actually means.
Yeah, wow. Welcome to the press conference. Welcome to the... Goodness, how long do we have? 30 seconds each. Yeah, wonderful question, and a wonderful philosophical, endless, you know, the poets haven't figured that out. Rumi didn't quite figure it out. I don't know if I'm going to be able to add much to the discourse. I'll give it a go though. I know upon reading it was really from reading the script. Immediately when I read the script, I thought, well, I didn't think it was a visceral feeling. It kind of plunges to the depths of you, and it shows you what's possible. It reminds you of your own capacities for that unconditional love, being awake to it, because I believe it is an energy that we're either awake to or we're not. We either allow in or we don't. I think we always get to choose it. But ultimately, it's deeply mysterious, and I think that there was a very mysterious thing that seemed to happen with your parents. That it was a transcendent love, and love doesn't even do it. Love as a word doesn't seem to encapsulate it. I remember the last scene of the film that we shot together, where you know, Robin's about to pass away, and I was so dissatisfied with the words. There were no words when I looked in Claire's eyes and Diana's eyes. There were no words that could do justice to the. Oh God, I might just cry in a TIFF press conference. I don't particularly want to, but there were no. I think I was even talking to you guys about it at the time. I was like, can we say something different? What is it that I actually need to say to her? What can I say that could possibly encapsulate the last however many years? So yeah, I mean, there's a kind of strange answer to a wonderful question.
But I also do think, I mean, the film, it's definitely a love story of these two people, no doubt about that. But I do believe it's also a story of love in that's for everybody. I think Robin and Diana had a lovely child, and it's about that, the continuation of love, and that their love for each other meant they could love other people even more, which I think is amazing. That they had such friends, like true friends, and felt such love for them in their actions and the things they did for people and the things they did for the wider world, and that, I think that's amazing, is that love isn't just, you know, flowers and romantic love. It's I mean, not that I know the answer, but I do think it is love for everything and everyone. But Andrew's right, that the idea of how on earth do you, that final, like, how on earth do you say thank you or express your love for someone? There are no words. It's just actions, isn't it? And the way that you treat people and the way that you live your life, I suppose. We have to have a go. We all have to do it.
Okay. I think for me, the extraordinary thing about Andrew and Claire was that the more time they spent together in the situation of Andrew's immobility and Claire being my mother, they started doing the things that my parents used to do without being told what they were. And there's an extraordinary moment in the first party scene where it's actually Jonathan's 3rd birthday, but Jonathan was behaving so badly that day that we had to take him out, and he was asleep upstairs.
Very true to life.
Very true to life. And there's a moment where Andrew looks at Claire, or Robin looks at Diana, and wiggles his nose, and she comes over and literally itches his nose. And they used to do that because my father obviously could feel, but he couldn't move, and my mother had to know at any moment what degree of discomfort or what my father was feeling. And to me, that's my understanding of love. It's about a detailed, granular assessment of what's going on with the person you're in love with at all times. Even when you're asleep, you're thinking about that person and you're learning about that person. And that to me is, you know, a very, sorry, it's a bit earthbound, it's not roomy, but that's what I took from my parents' life as to be what I understood about love.
Andy, did you want to chime in on this?
I'm fascinated by all of these theories. No, I suppose, you know, love is you know, if you have and you have children, you know, the concept of being with someone now, unless they like you, or they, you know, or you post a picture up of yourself and you're validated in some way, is kind of an alien thing to a young generation. And one of the things that the love that these people have is, I don't know, it feels to me potentially, which is why I think this film is such a great metaphor. It's something to reach for. It is so. It's so. It doesn't seem to exist in our world in the same way that these people were able to express it. And it isn't romantic love. And it isn't duty. But these two people stayed together when Diana certainly could have gone and left, and she didn't. And I think that concept of that in our society now is and it's empathy, really. Love is empathy. For me, it's always, you know, be able to see and experience and viscerally connect with another person's point of view. And I think that's what these people did, and have fun. And but I think I suppose what I'm getting at is that nowadays it's very easy to walk away. We live in a throwaway world, a massively throwaway world, and these people did not, and certain relationships don't. But I think culturally we are so alienated from each other now. That is why I found the power of this film so strong. The love at the centre of it is because it is a reminder that you know, of what true love actually is.
Andrew, you mentioned at the screening last night that you and Claire built a bond very quickly. And Claire, you talked about basically having to stare in his face all the time. And what is the history of this bond, or how quickly did it happen? And am I right that Andrew, you convinced Claire to take on this role? Is this, or no? Or you approached her?
Wordlessly, he did. He went.
No, Andy and Jonathan had the foresight that myself and Claire would possibly get along, and create an authentic connection. And I believe they were right. I think we did. I really enjoy your company.
It's like a weird sort of like acting dating agency. No, I think good. I mean, really good. In general, a few things I'd change. But I'd never done anything like that before, where you had to. I played parts where you obviously have to, you know, there's chemistry, or you have to kind of instantly get to. That's just what you do. You have to instantly get to know people. But I'd never done anything where it was my whole performance or character entirely relied on Andrew entirely. If I'd have hated his guts, it would have been really hard. But no, I just really like you, and yeah, it felt very, very easy. Weirdly, we both just never questioned it, and yeah, we didn't. I mean, we didn't do even anything.
No, but it's a rare thing, and it's a tricky thing to figure out and to find. And a lot of the time it doesn't work, but thankfully, I you know they I know Jonathan and Andy weren't willing to make a mistake in that department. You know, that is the heart and the essence of the story, is if you know these two people and how they affect everyone else around them because of their sincere love.
Andy, let's talk a bit about the film itself and the visual look of the film. How did you sort of chart that out? And you have camera angles that are from great heights and low camera angles. You mix it all up, and just the overall visual feel of the film.
Yeah, I started off by thinking this is really a mixture of Diving Bell and the Butterfly and Chitty Chitty Bang Bang, actually. And that was my starting point as a sort of. I'm joking, of course. I'm not joking, actually. There's something about the Heath Robinsonian approach to life that these guys had. That, again, going back to the pioneering aspect, that making life up as you're going along with always 2 minutes away from death seemed to me, a key element. I was also very, very inspired by the film Man on Wire and the relationship between Philip Petit, who obviously strung the wire up between the two towers, with the help of this incredible group of eccentric friends who loved him, and he was almost like a messianic figure at the center of this cabal of people who enabled him to do that. So. So there's that. Then there was a sort of rather Tintin-esque approach to the palette of the film, which was again very purposeful, because this group, going back to the vibrancy of their existence, the essence of Robin and Diana was not drab in any sense. It was not murky or grey or somber. It was bright. They burned bright, and I wanted to make it. To feel like that from the first frame of the shot to the last, and so everything about this film, although the all aspects of the story are absolutely authentic and true and happened, we took license, and I took license with elevating it and slightly lifting it so that it had, with Bob Richardson, amazing Bob Richardson, to create this level, this tonal world that enabled us to shift between the darkness of the film, but keep the humor and the levity. So that was very much the kind of approach.
And talk a bit about the soundtrack of the movie. One of the things that stands out in the soundtrack of the movie is the constant sound of the ventilator, of course, being a pace throughout the movie. And then there are other parts of the musical score, including Andrew's saxophone. Oh, this Andy.
Yeah. But anyway, so Nitin Sawhney was fantastic to work with. He's a very, very good dear friend of mine, and what he was able to do, and again, the music plays into the thematically into the Chitty Chitty Bang Bang of it. We wanted this sort of romantic thing. When you go into this movie, that you're watching this beautiful 1960s romantic movie that everybody thinks is going to, they think they're going to get what they think, basically. And then this event happens, and obviously life is turned on its head. The music had to, and I think it was definitely, I think we found, Jonathan and I in the edit, one of the most complicated aspects of the movie, because to keep that tonal shift without leading the audience, without overstating it, with playing it psychologically, have Nitin really find the root of what Robin was going through, and internally, psychologically, but also thematically about love. And also a spirit of adventure. We wanted the sense of adventure all the way through this. That these people were living an adventurous life, and so we came up with that sort of spirit of adventure / kind of love theme. at the beginning, which then is reprised when the wheelchairs all come out, and you know, and when he goes back and frees all of the other you know, inmates of the hospital. So that, and then actually, crucially, there was one piece of music that Nitin wrote, which was a beautiful piece of music, which we 5 minutes to 6 on the last day of the mix, so we were just about to lock picture and sound, we decided to take out, and it was the best decision that we ever did, which was the scene where Robin and Diana say that "my love, my life." That scene, which had a beautiful underscoring, but actually it didn't need it. We wanted to, at that point, go take everything out, pull everything out, and let these people be. So I think there was a great complex nature to the way that we with Nitin, you know, sculpted that score.
Great. I'm afraid we're out of time, so I'm just going to say that Breathe is a TIFF Gala presentation. It will have its theatrical debut across North America on October 13th. Thank you all for being here. Thank you guys for coming.
Thanks, guys.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Hey You Guys!
Hey You Guys, huh?
Hey You Guys.
Is that from the Goonies?
It is indeed, yeah.
Nice.
Hey